Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. It's our Monday afternoon live show. I'm Mark Givler. We have Kevin Noon here with me today. Big win for Ohio State over the weekend, dominating Iowa in front of a really good recruiting visitor list. A lot of big name in-state guys were on campus. Kevin, first of all, I know you saw a lot of the guys down the field for the game. How do you feel like the team and their effort on Saturday helped the recruiting effort? It was interesting to me that they had a lot of their top offensive linemen on campus, and then the O-line kind of turned out really one of the better O-line performances I think we've seen out of an Ohio State group in the last few years.
Yeah, Adam Guthrie shows up on campus as well. I mean, I feel that it was a good backdrop because you have a senior-laden offensive line, and that means there's going to be a lot of opportunities. I think, moving forward, when you lose somebody like a Josh Simmons, you lose somebody like Seth McLaughlin. I mean, I think all of that helps. I mean, there really was never a point of the game where it was in jeopardy, with the fans getting restless and, the boo birds coming out or the cat calls or anything like that. So, I felt it was a good backdrop. I mean, for what they were trying to do, especially on a home ticket where there's not, not named Michigan, there are not a lot of great home contests.
Yeah, I thought it was timed well. Again, a bunch of the O-line guys were there. A lot of the in-state O-linemen were there. Adam Guthrie gets his offer, so we can kind of quickly talk about that. I think if anyone's listened to me the last 6 months, my theory has been that Ohio State should simply focus on those four in-state guys: Deron Parks, Champ Smith, Iheanacho out of Maryland, and maybe pick one or two other guys nationally, and that should really be about it. I mean, if you can't get 5 offensive linemen in a cycle where you got 4 offers in Ohio alone, out of a select list, I don't know what to say. They shouldn't need to have a 40 or 50 guy list here. And so I think the way the offensive line is playing right now is helping things. I think that's going to help. They are, probably one of the better units really in the country right now. If you look at kind of what they're doing running the football, if you look at how relatively clean they've kept Will Howard. Josh Simmons is playing at a very high level. Seth McLaughlin's playing at a very high level. Donovan Jackson, as always, is a steady presence at left guard. And then I thought Tegra played his best game on Saturday. I thought Tegra was very noticeable, and I think that showed by how much they played him. There appeared to be less rotating going on up front. And I think they've kind of got the vibe that Tegra was out there kind of handling his business. And so if you can get that right side of the line going and playing at a high level, this has a chance to be a very good unit by the end of the year. And again, this is one of those things where it's going to continue to take time. This is a new group. I mean, you've got new starters, 2 new starters on the interior. So it was always going to take a few weeks, but I think we're seeing them improve just about every week.
Yeah, I mean, I was writing something for Hot 11, which doesn't air until tomorrow on Buckeye Huddle, about Josh Simmons and how far we've come from the first 3 or 4 games where everybody was like, oh my God, you went to San Diego State and this guy isn't even all that good. And now he's an all-conference performer type. And, I think that it's just really impressive with what they've done there. The development is fine. Now, if they could just couple that with recruiting.
Yeah. And I think they're well set up with the offensive linemen in state right now. This is just teed up too well for them in 26. It just has to, it has to be a really good O-line class, and I think it will be. Certainly, Justin Fry has faced his share of criticism the last year or two. Some of it deserved, some of it maybe a little bit hyperbolic, but I think what he's doing right now with this group on the field is not only going to help in recruiting, but I think it's going to quiet some of that noise for at least a little bit. Until one of those targets goes somewhere else. But no, I think they're in good shape with the Ohio guys. I really do. So we'll see. We'll get into some questions here soon. There is one thing I wanted to kind of get into, but let's hop on a few of these questions, and then we'll get to the other thing I wanted to talk about here. The best damn pod in the land. I saw Adam Guthrie got his offer over the weekend. Seems like things are turning in OSU's favor with him. Thoughts? Yeah, I did talk to Adam. There's a story up on Adam on BuckeyeHuddle.com if you want to read that. So he's going to visit. He's got a pretty good national offer list. We're talking about guys, schools like Texas, schools like, he's going to visit Georgia and Alabama. Like, he's got a lot of good programs in on him right now. So I think he's going to enjoy the process here throughout the season and into the winter and maybe even spring. But ultimately, I think this offer came early enough. They didn't lie to him. When I talked to Adam, I think the one thing he'll take from the story is they told him at camp in the summer, like, hey, we want to see your first 5 games of your junior season. Like, we need to see your first 5 games. And as soon as that happened, they kind of followed up with him and was like, hey, we think we've seen what we need to see. So that, they get him down on campus. They offer him in person, which is always a nice touch. And so I think they've handled this generally the right way. I know people were losing their minds in August about this. I kind of told everyone, I said, let's get to October. Let's wait. Because it felt this was a kid he's more of a developmental guy than maybe some of the other kids are recruiting. He plays at a smaller school, lesser competition than some of the other guys are recruiting. And so I just think they wanted to see some junior film and see that he's kind of made the strides that they want to see him make. And he's having a very good junior season, and he's a very talented player. He's a guy I thought, I've always wanted them to offer him. I've always kind of felt that this would be an offer that happened. But there was some things that needed to kind of fall into place. They have. And so I think they're going to be tough to beat here, but I don't think it's going to be kind of like an insta commitment type of thing where we find out something this week or anything like that. I think, again, he's got visits set up. He's going to see Ohio State again in Happy Valley next time when they go to Penn State. I suspect they'll get him back on campus for the Michigan game, which will have a lot of they'll have a ton of targets for that. But I think, I think that things are kind of where they need to be right now, given where everyone's at given where Ohio State's at in their evaluation process, given where Adam's at in his recruiting process.
My dryer is going loud right now, so I'm just muting myself. So I'll hand it over to you, and I'll just nod. But we're about a minute out of this cycle.
Wayne Taylor, thank you for the super chat. Thank you so much. Very generous. He says, thanks again for the good shows and positive insights. We appreciate the show is only as good as you guys make it, especially with this show. This isn't pre-recorded. It's a live show. I have 1 or 2, maybe even 3 things I want to talk about every week, but then we go to questions and kind of let you guys steer the discussion. So that's the only way that works is with you guys. So we appreciate you guys doing this every Monday afternoon and asking questions and kind of interacting with us. So we're not just talking to ourselves. Mellow number 7. What are your thoughts on Naeem Offord? Does he stick or flip? Yeah, that's like the every Monday topic is Naeem Offord. I think it's more likely that he sticks than flips, but I don't think it's like 90-10 or 80-20 even. Like I think it's close. I do think Auburn being a mess is going to help them with Offord more than it would help them with, say, Malik Autry. Again, I think Naeem's got a lot of things he's looking at. Obviously, playing time. Obviously, NIL is going to be a thing, which Ohio State's very competitive with that. But I also think he wants to win, and Auburn right now is not really proving that they're particularly ready to take that step. You still have Oregon in there, but Naeem Offord's been very good with Tim Walton on communicating. And so for now, I've got him sticking, but I I'm just going to, continue to tell you guys, like, this is going to be a thing until December. Like, it's not going to go away. I think everyone got a false sense of security in the summer. Naeem kind of made a mention of, I'm done with visits for the summer and still committed to Ohio State. And I think everyone was like, oh, well, that's good. That's the end of that. I was like, no. Let's pump the brakes there. There's going to be fall visits. There's probably going to continue to be fall visits. But again, I think, they've held on to him for a really long time. Tim Walton's done a really good job there. So I'm giving Tim Walton the benefit of the doubt right now, just on his track record. But this will not be stress-free.
I'm going to unmute. I'm done with the loud cycle on here. Here we go with Steve. How severe is Chris Henry Jr.'s injury, and does he stay committed to Ohio State?
Well, yes, I think he will stay committed to Ohio State. The only thing that I could ever see maybe making Chris seriously rethink things is if Brian Hartline wasn't in Columbus. And so there's really no reason to think that's not going to be the case at this point. So yes, with that, it's season ending. It's a significant injury. So it's all without having Chris right now giving me a thumbs up. I'm just going to put it at that. It's a significant knee injury and it's season ending. So, it's good. There's going to be some rehab ahead, but nothing that, look, guys come back from these knee injuries all the time. Chris is a really tough, strong kid. I mean, I don't have any concerns about long-term impact on this, but it's an unfortunate setback because he was having a good season. He was playing really well. He was kind of taking to it very well. So that's a huge, like Withrow is a really good program in Ohio, in Southwest Ohio. And like, they had some good teams on their schedule, but it's like nothing like what Modern Day brings to the table. So the fact that he was adjusting so well to that was super encouraging. So you kind of hate to see the setback, but no issues there for me. No concerns for me long-term on any of that.
Here we go with Billy Tuesday. Any 2026 quarterback developments?
Not anything significant. They're keeping an eye on Nathan Bernard from Ashland, Ohio, obviously. The in-state kid. He's having a good year. I've had questions, not so much in terms of me. I have him in my top 10 in Ohio. I think he's a really good player, but just haven't been convinced that like Ohio State's super sold on the fit in the scheme. But he's showing some ability to run this year. He's a good athlete. He's a good basketball player. So, it's kind of up to Ohio State on if that's what they're looking for. So I think that's something to watch right now until we get into like flip season. I would just say continue to keep an eye on the coaching carousel. Florida certainly looks like they're going to be moving on from Billy Napier at some point. I know they had probably their best performance of the season on Saturday, but there's just so much smoke out there about him getting canned at some point. And, one thing I think is going to slow down the coaching carousel a little bit now is this 12-team playoff. That's more coaches who are going to be. It's not just the 12 teams that are in the playoff. It's the 20 to 25 teams that have a chance to be in the playoff up until like the last week of the season, basically. So that's going to slow down, I think, some of these early departures we see. But, that's maybe something to watch with Will Griffin if they try and get back involved with Will Griffin, if there's a coaching change. But there's not a huge there's not what I would call a lot of smoke or buzz right now around quarterback recruiting at this point for 26.
Here we got from our Facebook channel, Teresa saying Buckeye and Oregon fans are in for a treat with what could be a classic matchup between two serious national championship contenders.
Yeah, and it was funny. I said on the post-game show on Saturday night, we were talking about it just briefly. We were kind of we kind of put the Iowa game to rest and spend just a couple minutes on the Oregon game. And I said something at the time I thought was like pretty much foolproof, and it turned out not to be, which is that, going into the season, I think we all thought this would be 2 versus 3 at worst, maybe even 1 versus 2. And I kind of said after the Iowa game, I was like, well, we're not going to get that, but it's still going to be a top 10 matchup. Well, we are going to get that because everybody seemed to lose the rest of the day. Alabama didn't come back against Vanderbilt, and then Arkansas beats Tennessee, and all sorts of carnage there in the top 10. And so sure enough, we do get 2 versus 3. So I agree. This is one of the most, I think, highly anticipated games, not for just for the fans. I think just for me, there's certain games where like they're preseason top 10s or preseason top 5s, and they're playing like week 1, and you're like, is that team really a top 5 or 10 team, or whatever? Like this is like a mid-season 2 versus 3. This is other than maybe some of these Michigan games where both teams have been in the top 5 over the years. This is about as big as it gets, in my opinion, for Ohio State over the last 10 or 15 years. This is a huge game.
It is. And you look in Ohio State's 4.5 point favorite, I think, right now on the road. So you're saying the difference between the 2 versus 3 team is 7.5 points or something like that, maybe 8. I think that we're looking at various levels in terms of teams this year nationally. And I think you certainly have your top cut of teams that really are competing for the CFP championship and getting in the 12-team field. But, are Texas and Ohio State that far and away from everybody else? At least we're getting an example of what Ohio State and Oregon look like at Oregon Stadium. And again, the 7.5, 8 that I'm saying would be at a neutral place. So, and we're gonna be in for a good one. And I'm willing to say won't be the last time they meet this year. I don't know if I'm going to go all in on it being a threefer, but I think we will see them play again in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think it's very possible, obviously, that these two teams see each other again at some point, whether it's a Big Ten championship game rematch, which is very possible, or even a playoff where, obviously the winner of this game is going to be in such a good position to probably nab one of those top 4. I know there's some other hurdles there. Ohio State's got Penn State, Michigan. There's some other hurdles, but I could see the winner getting a top 2 or 3 seed, and then the loser maybe getting a wild card game, and I think and being favored in that wild card game almost certainly, and then maybe you get like a second round matchup or whatever, quarterfinals matchup. I could certainly see something like that playing out. So yeah, this will be interesting. I've kind of said in the past, it's not hard to envision a world where Oregon becomes Ohio State's biggest hurdle to Big Ten championships on pretty much a yearly basis. It's not hard to see that materializing. Best damn pod in the land. Thank you for super chat. Mark, are you hearing any flip news on Malik Autry? I'm really still not very positive or optimistic on that for Ohio State. He's such a homebody. His family they're such like rural Alabama people. For me, I think the hard part for Ohio State here is that, like, even if Auburn becomes just such a nightmare that even Malik Autry, their first commit, local kid, even if he looks at that and says, I can't go there, it's like, okay, there's any number of SEC schools between Auburn and Columbus, Ohio, that would allow for him to play, at a top 5 or 10 program and stay, within, a couple hours of his home. So I'm just, I'm not convinced. Obviously Larry Johnson's going to keep trying. Zion Grady, who he's close with, they train together, is going to keep trying. But I'm not hearing anything that would make me think that he's going to flip to Ohio State at this point. But we'll continue to go down that path and continue to watch what he does. But just don't love the chances there.
We'll go here to Steve, who is watching us through Twitter X. I don't think Oregon, Ohio State will be as close a game as many people believe. Ohio State 40-24 over Oregon. I'm trying to work ahead because it is a short week on a 5:20 a.m. flight on Thursday. So I want to try and get everything done as quickly as I can, but I've not gotten to my prediction yet. I could make some arguments both ways. on this. It really is a top 5 matchup. I mean, it's talent equated and everything else. I think there are certain places that Ohio State has a real advantage. I think there are a couple places where Oregon may have a little bit of an advantage, and we'll see. A 16-point win would do a lot for the nerves of a fan base that already probably is on the anxious side.
Yeah. Look, I'm with Vegas on this because Vegas had Ohio State, I think it was like a 1-point dog going into the season in that game. So Vegas has shifted, almost 6 points. So I'm with Vegas in the fact that I feel better about Ohio State. And it's not that I didn't think Ohio State could win that game in August, but just I feel better about Ohio State's chances today than I did at the beginning of August. Just like when they went into fall camp, I feel better. The offensive line has come together more quickly and better than probably I thought it would. Chip Kelly I think we knew Chip Kelly would make a good impact on the offense. The impact he has made has been even greater than I thought it would be. They're 20 for 21 in scoring red zone touchdowns. That's insane. And that's been an issue for them in over the years. There's so many things that equate to winning football games. Again, red zone touchdown percentage is a huge, huge thing for winning football games. Turnovers is a huge thing for winning football games. They're turning it over a little bit on offense. At least they did against Iowa, but they're turning teams over a lot on defense, which they weren't doing the last couple of years as much. So they're doing these little things that people kind of overlook, I think, sometimes, that equate to winning games, especially winning games on the road. So I feel pretty good. Do I think it's going to be 16? I mean, I would take Oregon plus 16, but I think if Ohio State won by 10, would it shock me? No, wouldn't shock me. I think it'll be a tough game, but I think Ohio State's got the right stuff to go in and get the win.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I won't get too far ahead as I've been working on tail of the tape and Hot 11, and I got to work on 3 shots and everything else. That Oregon has gone against a good running game. They've gone against Boise State. So Ohio State's not necessarily going to come in and surprise them. But you look too, and Ashton Jeanty ran for 192 yards and 3 scores on 25 carries. Now, Oregon has made some adjustments with what it's doing, but I think Ohio State's got a good shot there. I think that Ohio State has a good shot, and on a lot of aspects. But where's Ohio State in terms of Tez Johnson is a freak, and that's going to be the person that does Denzel Burke flank him for much of the game, or do they just sit there and is it more of, well, which side does he line up in to determines if it's going to be IGB or if it's going to be Burke there. But we got a week of still breaking things down with all of this. Tom, Tony, and myself will be in Eugene. Well, we'll be in Portland on Thursday. We'll be in Eugene on Friday. We'll be having lots of content here at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Multiple live shows a day, if I had to guess. We will have a lot going on. You won't be working. You will be too nervous about this game. Don't worry. We got you covered.
Yeah, I can't wait for you guys to get out there. And, I'm kind of jealous. I've never been out there, so it'll be fun. I'm sure you guys have a lot of cool stuff to share with everybody. Before we get into more questions, I would like to dive into what I think is the next major national 5-star prospect in the state of Ohio, who I saw on Friday. And that is Huber Heights Wayne, wide receiver, class of 2027, Jamir Brown. Obviously has the Ohio State offer, had a dominant camp performance back in June at the Ohio State camp. Brian Hartline offered him on the spot. He is absolutely terrorizing defenses this year. He had an unbelievable game against 3-time defending state runner-up Springfield. Wayne crushed Springfield on Friday night. Jamir had 2 touchdowns, just electric plays. This first one's insane. Just kind of finds some space in the middle, breaks a tackle, and then the move here is just ridiculous. Not even down in flag football or one-hand touch football, and off to the races. So just an electric athlete. When you start talking about 5-star prospects, like when they're sophomores, I get a little bit whoa, let's not put too much on them. It should be stone cold obvious. Like when you go see a kid as a sophomore, to call him a 5-star, it should just be like anyone who maybe not even a big football fan who just watches, like, knows, oh my gosh, that kid's amazing. And that's what I felt with Jamir on Friday. Just a special type of athlete. He's a 10,500 meter guy as a freshman. So can't even wait to see what he clocks this year as a sophomore in his track season. So he's like maybe the fastest kid in the state of Ohio on track, but it translates to football. He's not stiff. He's got wiggle. He's got toughness. He's got size. He's 6'1", about 175, 180 pounds. He's gonna be one of those guys who plays 6'1", 195, 200 pounds. He's not small. But again, he's only a sophomore doing all these things. And to me, he reminds me a lot of Mylan Graham, except more Mylan like as a junior. I think he's like a year ahead of Mylan. And I thought Mylan was a 5-star. So this is a very, very special talent. I think this is the next guy in Ohio. I think he's a 5-star player. I think he's going to be like a top 5 or 10 national kid. I think he's going to be that good. Ohio's had some good receivers over the years. Obviously, Chris Henry Jr., we can kind of debate, is he an Ohio kid? What is he now? Is he a California guy? Like how do we kind of rate, Chris Henry Jr. in terms of like the Ohio receivers we've seen the last 15, 20 years. But I think Jamir is going to be like maybe the top guy that's come out of Ohio at receiver in maybe the last 20 years. I think he's like, I think we're probably going back. We might be going back to Ted Ginn Jr. If we take like the Chris Henry thing out of it, because he's playing his junior and senior years in California. Like I don't know that he would actually count. But if we take Chris Henry Jr. completely out of this and make it kind of simple, I think we're talking about that unique of a player. And oftentimes Ohio's had the big guy, like the 6'3" receivers, like the guys with this type of explosiveness. Like I go back to that first touchdown he scored. He's running full speed when he makes that move. Like he catches the ball, he's going full speed, he runs through a tackle, he's barely run through that first tackle, and he's still going full speed, and he makes that cut, and the kid doesn't even touch him. It was one of the most special open field moves I've ever seen in a high school game. It was just absolutely insane. So this is the next big thing, guys.
You won the lottery, because how many times do we talk about going and shooting a high school game? And it's like the game that I shot of Preston Bowman earlier this year, and he just largely was not a factor in the game. And I enjoyed going to the game and hearing the sounds and everything else, but I came out with nothing. And you had a real nice clip reel there of this kid. I could see it in the tape. This is the first chance I've had to watch it. I didn't even watch it when I was cutting it and putting it here into the system. But he plays bigger than he does. I mean, he just looks to be already stout.
Yeah, he's got a great attitude too. He's highly, highly hyper competitive. So Springfield had knocked them out of the playoffs last year, and he was telling me after the game how personally he took that, and you could see he did take that out on Springfield this year. So like I said, I can't wait to see what he runs on track this spring. He ran a 10.53 as a freshman in the 100 meters. I just can't even explain to you how fast that is. For a freshman.
Get into the starting blocks at 10.53.
Like when he and he's bigger this year than he was last year. Like he's filled out a little more. When he gets another 10 pounds of muscle, like what his track times? Because I don't. He may not have a senior track season. He may enroll early for football, and he may never even have a senior track season. But like his junior track season, like what are we talking here? Once he gets another 10 pounds of muscle and gets stronger, it's crazy. But like the thing about him was just sometimes you see track kids and they play football, and for whatever you're like, man, that kid really runs a 10.500. Like I don't know, like that's a little shocking. Like does the gear weigh him down? Why does he not look that fast? Like he looks every bit like it just plays so fast. And he also, like, again, some of the track guys can be a little stiff in the hips. He's got so much wiggle. Just an electric open field runner, just an absolute electric open field runner. So I can't wait to see what he as he develops here. But this is a very special player.
So there you go. Big one in 27. We'll see how long it takes the recruiting services to get that one right. We know that they are
visited on Saturday too. Visited for the Iowa game. Story on the front page with his highlight reel. If you guys didn't, if you felt like that went too fast when we were talking about it here, if you go to BuckeyeHuddle.com, there's a Jamir Brown story on the front page, and we have embedded his clips from Friday night in there, so you guys can check that out.
Jordan B, is Preston Bowman going to flip? I selfishly want him to because he has my last name and I want a jersey. So this must be Jordan Bowman.
It's kind of a holding pattern, as I've kind of said with him before, is I think Ohio State's evaluating. Ohio State knows they're not going to be limited by 85 anymore. They're evaluating the film. Preston, I think, didn't love kind of the delay in the offer, didn't love that he got it like the day after he committed to Kentucky. So that's kind of being ironed out. I think they've got a shot to flip him. It's probably not as automatic as you might think for a kid from Pickerington who's committed to Kentucky to just flip to Ohio State. And then Kentucky, for all its kind of offensive issues, is playing good football right now, winning games and being competitive against prime teams. So it's not like Kentucky's like in a spot where, they're not Auburn, right now, like we just talked about a few minutes ago. So I don't know. We'll see. I think right now I'm going to lean gun to my head right now. I would say no, but it's kind of the opposite of Naeem Offord in that it's not like 90-10. He's not flipping or 80-20. I think it could go either way right now, but right now I'm just not sure it's going to happen.
Another one from Jordan B. Do we have any opening now with things that Tennessee's lost and our O-line playing excellently? This is a David Sanders. He followed up. I knew where he was getting with this. That Tennessee kind of spit the bid against Arkansas, and Ohio State showing things on the field, but I don't think anything has necessarily moved Columbus any closer to Charlotte.
Yeah, look, David was so thorough with his process, and we can debate whether Tennessee's a better fit to go to for an offensive lineman than Ohio State. I mean, there's certainly, you can certainly sit there and look at Ohio State's development over the years and argue that was a better choice. But at the end of the day, like, David wanted to be close to home, and he also was very thorough with his process. This was not like a snap decision that he made. He took a lot of visits, did a lot of research. There's certain kids, like, they commit and you're like, oh, that's not going to stick. And David doesn't strike me as that. Now, Ohio State's done really well so far. The offensive line is playing well. Josh Simmons is playing himself to the point that I don't think he'll be back next year. I think he'll have his NFL opportunity after this year. So there's a lot of things you can continue to try and reach out and sell if you're Ohio State. But I would say no on this for now. Nothing I've heard would lead me to believe he's having second thoughts. But we'll see. We'll see how the next month, I guess, unfolds.
Mellow number 7. Jordan Hancock is going to prove why he's the best nickel corner in America come Saturday when he locks Tez Johnson up.
And that'll be interesting. Again, we talk about, like, how is Ohio State going to attack that? Historically, Jim Knowles has not really done the whole, tracking guys thing where he tells Denzel Burke, like, yeah, you've got Tez and you just follow him. That's historically not what Ohio State's really done. They generally kind of let guys play their positions, and then whatever matchup they get is the matchup they get. But undoubtedly, we're going to see very, very few 3 linebacker sets that we've seen the last couple of weeks. We're not going to see many of those on Saturday night. And undoubtedly, Jordan Hancock is going to be on Tez quite a bit And undoubtedly, Jordan Hancock is going to be a very important player in this game because of Oregon's speed and ability to stretch the field, and because we're going to see a lot of that nickel look. But I agree with your first part. I think Jordan Hancock is the best nickel in America. I think he's a tremendous player.
Yeah, and there was, amongst a lot of fans, a sense of frustration that he was the one coming off for the 4-3 and everything else. But, you can only have 11 out there, or 10 if you're Notre Dame, or 9. So you have to kind of make some adjustments. But with all of the weapons that Oregon has, we're not even talking about Evan Stewart really, and some of the and then Jake Ferguson, who's just a problem at tight end. I mean, it's going to be 4-2-5, and it'll be interesting to see how they're going to deal with, because they have more than one good tight end. That is the biggest spot that I have my concern in there, is what Ohio State's going to do with Oregon's tight ends, because this goes back to years and years ago where Wisconsin would always have at least 1.5 tight ends, and that would always be an issue for Ohio State of how to kind of figure that one out. We'll jump here. Wayne Taylor wants to know if you're going with us to the game.
I am not. I'm staying here. I'll catch a high school game on Friday. In fact, I might go see Guthrie and get some film on Guthrie for everyone. Now that he got the offer, I've been trying to come up with a good Friday for him. Just being down in Washington Courthouse. They're coming up. I think they're coming up to Chillicothe here in the next week or two. So either this week or next week, I'm going to try and get out to see Adam Guthrie again. I've seen him a bit, but I haven't seen him actually in pads. I've seen him at camps. I've gone to a workout or two he's done. So I need to see him in pads. So that's probably what I'm going to do Friday, but I will be somewhere on Friday with recruiting coverage. And I think these guys can handle the road trip without me. They're used to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a long one. We complain, we got to drive 5 hours to Penn State. I think we have a 5-hour layover in Phoenix.
Ouch.
This is just Southwest hosed us. I think I had a different flight booked, and suddenly I ended up on this one. So I don't know. Bradley Dunkel, who the heck would want to play for Hugh Freeze? Auburn isn't good, but money talks. It's more, again, he's out of Opelika. So I know who we're talking about here. Out of Opelika, which again is like a driver, 3-iron from Auburn. So it's just a proximity thing. There's just a familiarity there. There's just a level of comfortability. I mean, I moved 1,000 miles from my family to go to college. I don't know if I was ready to do that. And I think that sometimes when you get like these big Southern linemen, they may be even less ready because they're even bigger mama's boys.
Yeah. In regards to Autry, and even to an extent in regards to Naeem Offord, I don't get the sense that like Hugh Freeze is driving those recruiting process. Like I don't get the sense that really that Autry committed to Auburn because Hugh Freeze was there and he has this great vision of Hugh Freeze leading them to a national championship. Like I just think Auburn's been his home school for his whole life, and just that's the school. It's right down the corner from him. He's grown up rooting for Auburn. He's, parents are people who don't travel a lot. They kind of hang out in rural Alabama, and they're small town people. And I really think that's what's driving this. I don't think it's that, I just have to play for Hugh Freeze. I just don't with Autry, and with Offord, I don't think it's that either. I just think it's, again, you'd be playing for your home state. I'm sure NIL opportunities will be there. They'll be there at Ohio State too, but you got to think Auburn's going to be a little extra desperate on the NIL front. And you've seen it. I mean, you've seen it you said they've pulled a bunch of great recruits, as Bradley notices. And I think it's this intersection of Alabama, like Saban's gone, power vacuum created / we have to get this going. Like we have to get this going. And so I think you're seeing that urgency from Auburn in all facets, from how hard they're recruiting people to the NIL efforts to everything. is just they feel like there's this window of opportunity that may close soon, and so they've got to get this together in this class.
Gary K., I'll get to your question in a second. I wanted to you're talking about the power vacuum in Alabama, and I don't think Kalen DeBoer, his fate is any better right now after the whole Malachi Moore blow up on the field, really just having a major meltdown and everything else. Just saw an Alabama player who only had like 25 snaps between Georgia and another one of the big games. He's just like, I'm going to go to the portal now. Starting to wonder if maybe Kalen DeBoer is in a little bit over his head in that situation. I know that it's really premature to get to that point right now, 5 games into the season or whatever. But, I don't think I would have ever expected certainly under Nick Saban, which is an unfair standard, to see that kind of just stupidness that I saw out of Malachi Moore.
Yeah, it's been if you're an Alabama fan, what a roller coaster the last 10 days have been. You basically crush Georgia for most of the game, and then all of a sudden they come back, and then you finish that game, and you just think life is great. Kirby Smart's 1-6 now, I think, against Alabama, and then you lose to Vanderbilt for like the first time since I think before I was born. So it's going to be interesting how they respond. This could go either way. Which was the fluke? Was the fluke the first 2.5 quarters against Georgia, or was the fluke what we saw against Vanderbilt? So we'll see. I know there's a lot of high school coaches in Alabama watching that situation closely. A lot of recruits, of course, too. So, we'll see how that goes. I like Kalen DeBoer. Did a great job at Washington. The fit at Alabama, we'll see. He's not from that part of the country. A lot of his staff is not really from down there. So it's an interesting fit. But if you win, it doesn't really matter. So that's kind of we'll wait and see. I will say, if you guys listen to the Daily Huddle, it's Garrett Seawright does a college football daily show for us. It's only about 10-15 minutes, so it's super easy to listen to, like on your drive to or from work. And he just kind of picks a topic or two of the day in college football nationally, and often running for 10 or 15 minutes, nice and quick. He had an episode out that I think caught a lot of people by surprise last week, and he said, I watched the game. I know Alabama beat Georgia, but I think Alabama has more questions than Georgia to answer coming out of that game. And people kind of took him to task on that on social media and in the comments of the video. And it's like, well, that aged pretty well. So go check him out if you haven't already. But so that's my plug for Garrett, kind of calling the Alabama. I don't think he necessarily called the upset by Vanderbilt, but he came out of that game thinking he had more questions about Alabama than Georgia, and looks to have been correct about that.
Yeah. Gary K., what are your feelings about Jakeem Stewart and the Buckeyes' chances? I know the whole LSU pool with a Louisiana player. We're going to probably talk about Jakeem at least 3 out of every 4 weeks, I have a feeling, because he's just one of those players. I mean, he reclassified. I mean, what is he in according to the other services and everything else? I mean, he's special. He is special. I don't think that if you were just, some dumb kid, that you would be able to reclassify and play defensive line. And I mean, this kid looks like he should reclassify to the NFL, to be quite honest. But I'll throw it to you, Mark, in terms of the questions on how Ohio State's status is and everything else, because I think we're going to be pretty starved for information on this one for large stretches.
I continue to think Ohio State definitely has a chance here. And I'm usually the first guy to be like, oh, they're not getting the kid from Louisiana. Don't even waste your breath. So Larry Johnson, big factor. Chase Young, He's a big Chase Young fan. Chase is playing in New Orleans now. Met up. They were able to see each other on the field after one of the recent Saints games. And I know Chase is a really good ambassador for the Ohio State program, so I'm sure he put in several good words for the Buckeyes there. Again, we're hearing from people on the ground that he isn't as enamored with LSU as in Brian Kelly as maybe you would suspect a kid from New Orleans to be enamored with LSU. So I personally think he doesn't want to go to LSU. That's been my opinion for the last several months. But I've seen a few kids over the years who didn't want to go to LSU or maybe didn't love LSU as much as maybe other people in state do, end up there. And the pressure is enormous. It's tough. But like USC is the other school I thought had done a really good job. Now USC's got some issues. Their defense is better. Is it where it needs to be? No. So they're going to play we need you to put us over the top card. But like Ohio State's able to lay out a very enticing plan with Jakeem. We know they're going to be competitive in NIL. We can stop with the myth that they're not. We know they're going to be competitive with NIL, but we know they're going to have opportunities. They're going to lose that like entire front. Now, do they have guys ready to step in next year? Of course they do. Kenyatta Jackson, Cade McDonald, these guys are going to, I think, have really big breakout years next year. But there's an opportunity to play early there. And they've already told him, like, look, you're not a defensive end. You're not a defensive tackle. You're a defensive lineman. So they'll play him inside. They'll play him outside. And that's kind of what that is what he is. He's not like Chase Young, just pure blur coming off the edge. He's going to play. He's probably going to play close to 300 pounds. I mean, he is a huge kid. He's every bit of 6'6". So he's going to be like one of those 6'6", like 295-pound freaks that can play inside and outside. And so they've let him, they're not even like, they so often, Larry Johnson's got this like specific plan of you're a 3-tech, you're an end, you're a nose, whatever you are. And he has told Jakeem that like, we're going to move you all over the place. We're going to make you the most versatile defensive lineman like in the country, basically. And so there's a lot of appeal there. And I think all things equal geographically, I think Ohio State would be the pick. I just don't know. The thing I can't know and can't predict is what happens like the week leading up to his decision with the pressure cooker down there. Because I've just seen so many kids fall into it. You think they're going somewhere else, you think they're going to spurn LSU, and they don't.
His parents want him at LSU. I mean,
right.
Does mom want him at LSU?
Right. And so I'm cautiously optimistic right now. But again, the big hurdle isn't here yet. It won't be here until he's ready to decide, and then the pressure goes up.
Let me see what else. Here we go with Cameron. Any updates on Brady Edmonds from this weekend?
Yeah, so 2027 quarterback Brady Edmonds. A lot of people have him sort of penciled into their obnoxiously early 2027 recruiting class. Look, I think Ohio State's 1,000% in the driver's seat. My question, and I think we might even find this out fairly soon. My question is, is Ohio State ready at this point? They don't have a 26 quarterback, that's fine. Like whatever, that probably shouldn't factor into this too much, but are you ready to shut down quarterback recruiting 6 games into the class's sophomore seasons? Like you're not going to watch the rest of the sophomore season. You're not going to have summer camps before their junior years. You're going to just, so you have to be so sure. And we've seen this. I think Brady's really good. He's super impressive, but we have seen the early quarterback commitments not pan out. either both from a developmental standpoint or from a, they flip. So I think the conversations right now, both internally with Ohio State and with Brady, are simply, is this going to be finished? Because, or else there's no point in this. Just enjoy the recruiting process for another 12 months or 6 months or whatever it's going to be, and we'll be here. So I think those are the conversations happening right now. But Ohio State's, in my opinion, very much in the driver's seat there.
Do you want to play defense for like a million years on this one with a kid who's not local? And then as to Mark's point of, I'll name names. I mean, I think that they moved too quickly on Danny Clark in his recruitment on one side, but on the other side, did Ohio State with everything that ended with the Corey Dennis era and before they were able to get everything in, did they not move quickly enough trying to like lock up a Jared Curtis? So, you got both ends, but I think that this is, 27 is insanely early. And I don't think that, I'm okay too with them not having a 26, whether they go portal or whether they get the kid from Ashland or whatever their decision may be there. But I don't think that there's a rush. I don't think you're not suddenly getting Brady Edmonds to sign. It's not like you're gaining anything at that point. All you're doing at that point is being held to a different set of standards because you are now where he's committed.
Yeah, it just tells all the other schools who they have to recruit against. Looks like we got a Tavian St. Clair question.
Okay, yeah, let me get to that one. I just saw it, and now it's from Jordan B.
Okay, there it is.
Here we go. Jordan B. Do we need a 26 quarterback if Tavian St. Clair is as advertised? Yes. Whether that's a true 26 quarterback in terms of a high school player or whether it's a transfer portal guy, yes. You just, and I do think Tavian's fantastic. So this isn't a knock on Tavian. You have to take one every year. You just do, because they don't stay. They don't stay. It's just a constant revolving door, especially in a place like Ohio State where you're recruiting, a bunch of top 100 prospects and they all think they should be starting. So they're going to go somewhere else and start. And so, I think you have to take one. Now, I'm not particularly, because of St. Clair, I'm not super concerned about them not having one yet. And that some other guys have gone somewhere else, and guys can flip, guys get better that we're not talking about right now, guys get worse that we were talking about before. Like, I'm not at the point, look, CJ Stroud was a super late addition. Julian Sayin, who's probably their next starting quarterback, what didn't even sign originally with Ohio State. So, there is plenty of time to figure this out. And even with St. Clair ahead of them and with, presumably someone like Julian Sayin waiting in the wings, I still think it's going to be an appealing place for quarterbacks, because the pitch is always essentially look, come be a part of this loaded quarterbacks room. If you're good enough to start here, history tells you you're going to be an NFL guy over the last 7 or 8 years. And if you're not, if you're here 2 or 3 years and it hasn't happened yet, you can go have a great career somewhere else, but come in here and develop. And so I think you take one every year and, let the chips fall where they may. Now we'll see what they do in 26. Do they go after Nathan Bernard here in state? Do they just kind of take their time again and find someone late? Do they portal it up instead? See, I don't know, because I don't know how you go portal at this point. It's early, obviously. We're getting a year ahead of ourselves here, but the dynamic in that room with what I think is going to happen with Julian Sayin, I think makes it tough to go portal unless it's again, what we're now on Chug 4.0 or Chug 5.0. I forget what we're at now.
Well, the kid from Oregon State that I've already forgotten the name.
3.0, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're on Chug 4.0 now. The next time they do that, maybe that's the answer. But yeah, I mean, and also like, this is kind of an underrated thing, and you need reps. Like, you can't have like 2 or 3 quarterbacks because you're going to throw their arms out in practice. Like, you have to have other guys, especially when they do the split fields now. Like, they're practicing essentially 2 fields at a time. So they're running like 2 groups at a time. So there's 2 quarterbacks throwing at all times. You'll throw guys' arms out. So you need to have a stocked room. You just have to. And the 85 number we know is going up. So that, even more incentive to make sure you're taking a quarterback every year.
Yeah, having 5 quarterbacks like they do at the moment is going to be increasingly rare, but you really need to have 4. You really need to try and have 4, even if one is Chug 4.0 or Gunner Hoke 2.0 or whatever you may say there. Jordan B, was Sonny Styles' improvement this week a result of Iowa offensive scheme, or did he really take a jump to be ready this week? I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, I think that Iowa with Caleb Johnson and, being a very, very obvious running scheme and everything else. And I'm saying that's a matter of obvious is, that he needed the game to slow down for him or anything like that. But I think it was much more set for his skills. I think that, I want him in a position where he is, go see ball, get ball, go get that guy or whatever, as opposed to getting stuck out in coverage and some things like that, where maybe it's not, it's not where his strength is, as he's moved down a level from safety to linebacker. But I think that with each, he's not played a lot of linebacker. I think with each week, with each set of reps he picks up each week, things are going to come into focus for him more.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do think the Iowa game came at the right time. It's a fairly predictable offense. Not a lot of mobility there with McNamara, so you're not even really worried about him really pulling the ball and running. So I think Sonny was able to, kind of take advantage of that a little bit, just being a little bit more of a predictable offense. But there's no doubt he was playing faster. He was making his reads faster, he's reacting faster than we've seen him do so far. I was very encouraged by it. We've talked on the post-game show the last couple of weeks about, like, okay, what do you do with Sonny? Because you obviously you have to play him extensively. You have to let him make some mistakes. It's the only way he's going to get better is to go out there and play live action against different looks, different offenses. It's the only way he's going to ever get better. At the same time, I was like, okay, that's all well and good. But if it's, 21-21 in the fourth quarter at Oregon, what are you doing at linebacker? And so that's going to still kind of be my question this week. Like, where do they go with their 2 linebackers this week at crunch time? But I think Sonny, in the way he played this past week, gives them more confidence to stick with him in those situations. So I was really encouraged by it. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, this will be a really big test for him this week because Oregon, they do have power and toughness, but they've got a lot of speed, a lot of lateral quickness, you're going to get more misdirection. You're going to get a little bit more mobility from the quarterback position. You're going to get a lot of stuff that I don't think you saw with Iowa. So he's going to have to recalibrate a little bit. So I think it's going to be really interesting. I think that's one of the keys actually to Saturday's game is the linebacker play, and whether what we saw last week, which was very good against Iowa, this week, which we saw against Iowa, which was very good, or what we saw the previous week, which wasn't very good against Michigan State.
And remember, Oregon beat Ohio State in 2021 in Columbus. So there is a little bit of proof of concept. So, I mean, I don't think that you're going to see a case of where Oregon is going to be, concerned and like scared of what Ohio State has. I mean, obviously you have to respect what Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka and the two-headed running game and everything else, where, believe it or not, like Trevion Henderson's averaging 8 carries a game. I mean, he's how much tread is he going to have in his tire coming into that point? But I want to get to Bradley Dunkel's question about, is Air Nolan the scout team Dylan Gabriel this week? you could use multiple guys. I mean, you have to use somebody who can replicate the throws, who might be more of a Lincoln Keenholz. And then, in terms of the mobility side, it may not even necessarily have to be Air, who, is not, how does his body type match up to what Dylan Gabriel is? You could sit there and theoretically, for the mobility side, you could have a receiver going out there or somebody like that. So I don't know. I wouldn't get too caught up in just one person being the scout team guy. It doesn't have to be a one-to-one type of proposition.
Yeah, that's something we probably find out tomorrow. What they might. I don't know if they'll share that. I don't know if they would share. We can, but we'll double check on that here.
We ask, and sometimes they'll answer, and sometimes him and Haw.
We'll go through back channels if we have to. Yeah, they have several options. I mean, Air might make sense with the left-handed angle. That might make some sense.
That would make some sense. Yeah, I didn't think on that, but yeah, I mean, again, you want to make sure too that you're having guys who are giving the best look, because if you're just trying to sit there and put guys into buckets or whatever, and it's like, well, this guy's got like 70% of it or whatever, you want to try and make sure that you're getting the whole package there, and that's one of the big challenges. Like, how do you prepare for Jeremiah Smith? Who do you have on your team if you're somebody else? It's like you're number 4. Okay, thanks. I mean, that's about all we might have in common at this point, because you can't necessarily prepare for certain guys. But I think, Ohio State certainly has enough depth and range of talent to be able to do something for Gabriel.
What's the closest NFL city to Eugene? Is it San Francisco?
No, probably Seattle.
Seattle?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be Seattle. There, yeah. So the answer to the question is, who's going to be number 4? Is they're going to have to fly in DK Metcalf? That's the answer.
Yes, exactly.
Who's number 4 for scout team?
I was going to say Jeremiah is physical. He may not be DK physical quite yet. Give him a year for that. But I mean, that physicality on the one-handed catch, kind of holding the defensive back off and everything else. I mean, alien. He's just an alien. We are caught up on questions as we're here at about an hour. So that's kind of what we've targeted. Sometimes we go an hour 10, hour 15. It just really depends on what we've got here. I know a lot of people have Oregon on the mind. And again, as I said, we're going to have plenty of coverage here on the channel, whether or not you watch us on youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, you listen to us through the audio side, through Spotify or whatever. You're going to want to make sure that you do whatever it takes, on YouTube. Hit the bell, subscribe to the channel. Don't miss out on a single thing. We are going to have so much coverage coming up. And if you're listening on Spotify or whatever, you write us a 5-star review. That helps us with our distribution over there. But check us out at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle when you get a chance. So much better when you get to see our pretty faces.
Yeah, and obviously Ross Fulton's been doing some great stuff with breakdowns as well. So no problem for anyone listening to that, but I think you'd probably get more out of those specific shows if you watch those on YouTube, where you have the video breakdowns and things like that. And but we appreciate regardless of how you're listening, watching, whatever, we appreciate it. We will. I'll have my live chat tomorrow, so I'm sure we'll talk a lot of Oregon game there. I'll have my live chat. I'll get that thread up. I usually post it late on Monday night so people can get questions in, and then by the time Tuesday morning rolls around, I've got some questions up there. But I think we'll have you covered with Oregon coverage here throughout the week. Guys will head out there a little bit early and get you some boots on the ground coverage from Portland and Eugene, and maybe check out a spot or two in those cities as far as Hungry Huddles or something. We'll figure something out, but stay tuned there. And we'll see you at BuckeyeHuddle.com until next Monday.